Kenny, worthy opponent. Anytime you want to settle this for the tiebreaker, no good spot.
I've never seen it.
So how did we get here? How did we get to Will Ospreay versus Kenny Omega 3? Well, for that, we have to go back to 2022 when Will Ospreay walked through the Forbidden Door and showed up on Dynamite. And this debut would lead to Orange Cassidy versus Ospreay at the first Forbidden Door in a fantastic match and a hell of a way to introduce not only Will Ospreay's heel character, but his general wrestling ability to the AEW audience. But the seeds for Omega versus Ospreay were officially planted at RevPro in July. Ospreay would hit the one-winged angel and force Mad Kurt to kick out, pretending to be shocked as a shot to Kenny Omega. Omega would respond, saying, "Well, I don't really get it, it's childish, but hey, great execution." To which Will would reply, quite simply, "If you're a cunt to me, I can be a bigger one to you." Officially planting the seeds for Kenny Omega versus Will Ospreay. August of that year, United Empire was invited to take part in the inaugural AEW World Trios Championship Tournament. They would win the first round, which would set up a feud to face the Elite the following week.
Hopefully you can handle it a little better than filling my shoes in New Japan.
Not only did Kenny disrespect Will and say he couldn't fill his shoes, the Elite would beat the United Empire the following week on Dynamite, but the United Empire would get their revenge attacking them post-match. Unfortunately, due to Brawlout at All Out 2022, the Elite were suspended and would not return to the company until November, so this build was put on hold.
Omega, Will Ospreay, Wrestle Kingdom.
Following Full Gear 2022, Kenny Omega would challenge Will Ospreay at Wrestle Kingdom, to which he would accept, starting one of the most intense feuds in New Japan history.
You're either going to pass this torch or I am going to fucking take it from you. You're just not quite ready to grab that torch yet. It's not your time. That's what I came back to prove.
And this was the crux of the whole feud. Kenny didn't think Will was the guy, didn't think Will had it in him to take over Japan and do what he did. And Will felt disrespected, and they beat the living shit out of each other in the Tokyo Dome, but Kenny would come out on top in a brutal, vicious match, the ending which saw Ospreay accepting his fate and taking the one-winged angel after telling Kenny to fuck himself. Not only did Kenny Omega win the match, but he was now the new IWGP US Heavyweight Champion, taking that from Will and taking it back to the United States. But all was not well for Omega, because his former friend and mentor Don Callis would not only betray him, but recruit Takeshita to his family as well. World, he'll do anything to end Kenny Omega. At New Japan Dominion, Will Ospreay would defeat Lance Archer in a number one contender match for the IWGP US title, declaring his intention to go after Kenny Omega.
Kenny Omega! Remember me? You should have killed me when you had the chance, because I'm back for revenge!
And with Omega set sight on Takeshita, he was blindsided by Ospreay, who also joined the Don Callis family and his intentions to bring down the Cleaner, setting up Omega vs. Ospreay 2 in Toronto, Kenny's home country, for the IWGP US title. And boy, did that second match deliver. Right away, the intensity of this match was off the charts. Both men's with something to prove. Ospreay trying to get his win back, Kenny trying to still prove he's the best. The reversals, the counters, the chemistries, the brutality, everything was in this match. Even the callback to Ospreay getting his face smashed in and him doing the same to Kenny. Ospreay even tried to use One Wing Angel to no avail. The turning point was the Tiger Driver, where he dropped Kenny on his head, hit a Stormbreaker for the win, and becoming the new IWGP US title, stealing it back from Kenny and going back to Japan with his prize like he promised. Post-match, Will would even say, "If you ever want the tiebreaker, I know a place," alluding to Wembley and All In 2023. However, that match would have to wait, as we found out Jericho was going to be the one to take on Will Ospreay at All In 2023 in Wembley. Ospreay even alluding to that he already beat Omega, he beat Okada, and once he beats Jericho, that's 3 legends in 2 months.
I've beaten Kenny Omega, Kazuchika Okada, and Chris Jericho in 2 months.
And we would get to Wembley, and boy, was it a beautiful sight to see the aerial assassin show up in Wembley, taking on Chris Jericho in another fantastic match in front of 80,000 plus people. He would pick up the win in his home country. Then, in a huge shock to the wrestling world, at Full Gear 2023, Will Ospreay revealed to the world that he was officially All Elite, bruv.
I am All Elite, bruv!
This would officially mark both Omega and Ospreay under AEW contract for the first time. And unfortunately, December of 2023, Kenny Omega would reveal he would have to step away because he was dealing with a serious bout of diverticulitis. This would unfortunately sideline Kenny for over a year, because his official AEW debut at Revolution 2024, defeating Takeshita. Ospreay would start to turn face, as in Dynasty 2024 when he faced Bryan Danielson, his conscience got him after he used the Tiger Driver, hurting him in the match. He vowed not to use that anymore unless he absolutely had to. Ospreay would capture his first singles championship by defeating Roderick Strong at Double or Nothing 2024. After winning his second Casino Gauntlet, he became the #1 contender for the world title, but he came up short and fell to Swerve at Forbidden Door 2024. After losing his international title to MJF, they would start a program all summer, concluding at All In 2024, where Ospreay would win back his international title in his home country of London. Kyle Fletcher would betray Will Ospreay at Wrestle Dream, costing him his international championship to Takeshita and turning on his former friend. Fletcher would go on to beat Ospreay at Full Gear 2024. Ospreay would get his revenge on Fletcher in the semifinals of the Continental Classic at World's End, but he'd fall short to Okada. After Will's loss to Okada, Kenny Omega surprised the world by returning and confronting his former longtime rival. With the Don Callis family trying to attack Kenny, Ospreay would shock the world by aligning with Kenny in an enemy of my enemy situation to take down Fletcher and Takeshita together at Grand Slam Australia. Ospreay would win the rubber match at Revolution in a bloody steel cage match, finally dispatching Fletcher and setting his sights on the Owen Hart tournament. Omega would finally beat Takeshita and take the international title for himself, becoming a Triple Crown champion for the first time in AEW, as well as a Grand Slam champion. And once again, Ospreay, with his eyes on the prize, trying to go to All In to get a world title shot, would come up short and lose to Hangman at Double or Nothing in the Owen Hart final. However, he would team up with Swerve and beat the Young Bucks in a fantastic match, stripping the Young Bucks of all their EVP powers and sending them on a downward spiral. All In didn't go so well for Kenny, as he faced his former rival Okada in a losing effort in a unification match for the International and Continental Championship. Okada, having betrayed the Elite and joined the Don Callis family, would win and become the new unified champion. The following month at Forbidden Door 2025, Ospreay in a post-match attack was taken out by the Death Riders, having his neck broken and sent away for 7 months. Both Omega and Ospreay would make their surprise return at Revolution 2026, seemingly ready to cross paths at some point in time. Kenny, now focused on the world title picture, defeated Swerve to become the #1 contender, but would fall short and lose to MJF at Dynasty 2026.
I don't have any more time left.
My ambition is still be the AEW World Champion. And I hope that we haven't given up on that dream either.
And that was the first big tease of Ospreay and Omega 3, because those were the seeds that were planted, setting up the rubber match at Wembley. Will still focused on winning the Owen. He was one step closer after Double or Nothing, beating Samoa Joe. But he told Kenny, don't give up your dream, and basically admonished him for not being there.
For sure it would be if you showed up. Not for a while, so why aren't you here, man? Don't give up on that world title, mate.
Yeah.
And then Will Ospreay would do it at Forbidden Door 2026. He would win the Owen Hart, punching his ticket to the main event of Wembley. One more piece had to fall into play, and that was Kenny Omega.
2026 main event at Wembley. Jeez, But just because you've given up on yourself doesn't mean I've given up on myself.
Championship more than any guy. I want to wrestle you at Wembley Stadium, but do you really think this is a good idea? But I don't think you believe in you.
I'm gonna go out guns a-blazing. And hopefully, I've got your support.
And face Will Ospreay, the winner of the Owen Hart Cup.
And after the push he needed by the Bucks and Ospreay, Omega agreed to MJF's stipulation that if he loses, he could never challenge for the title again, setting up the match at Beach Break for the World Championship. And Ospreay would even help Omega by stopping MJF from using the ring, shocking not only Omega, but MJF as well. This gave Omega an opportunity to use the title. However, he didn't want to win that way. He threw down the title, got hit with a low blow, and then got hit with the title himself, but he surprised everyone by kicking out at 1. Omega would persevere, hit the one-winged angel for the 3, and for the first time in 5 years become the AEW World Champion, which means we are now going to get Ospreay Omega 3 in London for the rubber match.
Wembley Stadium,